Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at a market today that, well, you probably haven't given much thought to. Something seemingly quite ordinary.
Right. But imagine this ordinary market is already worth billions.
Billions, yes. Soon hundreds of billions. And it's actually projected to get close to $1 trillion in about, what, 10 years?
Exactly. And the item, you might not guess it. We're digging into a report today all about folder holders.
Folder holders. It sounds so specific, almost mundane. So the source for this deep dive is a report from Cognitive Market Research.
That's right. It's titled The Global Folder Holder Market Report.
And our mission today really is to unpack the numbers they've provided, 2021, 2025, the forecast for 2033.
Yeah, and try to figure out how this market can be so big and growing so incredibly fast.
And what's behind it all? Basically giving you the shortcut to understanding this surprisingly massive trend in organization.
So the first thing that just leaps out is the scale. It's honestly a bit mind-boggling for something called folder holders.
Right. The report says back in 2021, the global market revenue was $79.1 billion.
Okay, $79.1 billion. That's already a huge number, isn't it?
It is. But then, look at this. It more than doubles to $178.12 billion by 2025.
Whoa, okay. Doubling in just 4 years? That's serious speed.
And it doesn't stop there. The projection for 2033, get ready for this. It's expected to surge past $903.26 billion.
Or 900. Okay, that's approaching $1 trillion by 2033.
I know. It implies this massive sustained growth. We're talking a compound annual growth rate, the CGR, of 22.5% globally.
22.5%. That is incredibly high. I mean, that's an unusual growth rate for pretty much any market.
Let alone one that sounds like it's about, wire trays on your desk.
Exactly. So the big question this immediately throws up is, what on earth are they counting when they say folder holder to get numbers like these?
Right. If it's just like simple manila folders or those plastic desk organizers, how does that possibly add up to nearly $1 trillion, especially when everything's supposedly going digital?
That's the puzzle here. The report gives us the numbers, it lists some drivers we'll get into, but it doesn't explicitly define folder holder in exhaustive detail. But the sheer size, the growth rate, and the drivers they do mention, things like digitization, hybrid work, it strongly suggests this category must be way broader than just physical stuff.
Okay, so what could it include?
Well, it likely covers a whole range of organizational solutions, maybe digital filing systems, interfaces for cloud storage, perhaps document management software, maybe even tools that help bridge physical and digital documents.
Right, sophisticated ways to manage information, basically.
Yeah. It seems like folder holder might be a surprisingly narrow-sounding term for a very broad concept of information organization tools and systems. The numbers almost demand that broader interpretation.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense then.
Yeah.
If we assume it's this wider category of organizing documents and information, the growth is still incredibly impressive, but maybe less baffling.
Still very impressive, yes. So let's look at where this is happening. Let's break it down by region, keeping that wider scope in mind.
Okay, where should we start? North America.
Sounds good. North America is definitely a major player. In 2021, it accounted for $22.4 billion.
$22.4 billion. And then
that figure grew substantially to $49 million by 2025. And the projection for 2033? $241.2 billion.
Wow. That's huge growth.
And the regional CAGR reflects that a very strong 22%.
Okay. And within North America?
Well, the U.S. is the giant, obviously. It went from $15.8 billion in 2021 to $34.2 billion in 2025, and it's expected to hit $166.2 billion by 2033.
$166 billion just in the U.S.
Yeah. And Canada and Mexico aren't small either. Canada is projected to reach $48.5 billion by 2033. Mexico, $26.5 billion.
In their growth rates.
Both really strong CGRs, over 22% each. So yeah, consistently high growth right across North America.
Okay, let's hop across the Atlantic, Europe. Another big piece of the puzzle, I assume.
Definitely. Europe's revenue was $20.2 billion back in 2021.
$20.2 billion. And fast forward.
It grew to $45 billion by 2025, and the forecast for 2033 is $224.9 billion.
Very similar numbers to North America, then.
Very similar. Europe's regional CAGR is 22.3%, almost identical.
And the major countries there?
Germany is a big one, projected to hit $42.3 billion by 2033. France is forecast at $34.2 billion. The UK is also significant, expected to reach $27.7 billion.
And others.
Yeah, places like Italy, Russia, Spain, they're all projected to be substantial, multi-billion-dollar markets for these
Okay.
holders or organizational solutions by 2033. Even Luxembourg, starting smaller, sees huge growth.
Interesting. Anything else stand out in Europe?
Yeah, a projected CAGR of 23.8%, reaching $35.5 billion by 2033. It suggests this demand isn't just in the biggest economies, it's spreading pretty rapidly everywhere.
Okay, good point. So where next? Asia Pacific. The report seemed to highlight that region.
Absolutely. APAC is flagged as one of the fastest growing markets globally, and the numbers bear that out.
Okay, let's hear them.
So APAC started at $24.8 billion in 2021, surged to $59 billion by 2025.
59 billion. Okay.
And the projection for 2033 is quite staggering, $314.3 billion.
314 billion. Wow. That overtakes Europe and North America.
It does. And its regional CAGR is remarkable, too, 23.3%. That's the highest among the major regions.
And the drivers there.
The report mentions rapid economic expansion and, crucially, digital transformation, which, again, makes sense if this category includes digital solutions.
Right. And which countries are leading the charge in APAC?
China is massive here. It's actually the largest single-country market in this category globally. It went from $11.4 billion in 2021 to $27.1 billion in 2025.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
2021 to $27.1 billion in 2025, and is forecasted to hit $145.2 billion by 2033. That's with a high 23.4% CAGR.
Incredible numbers. Any other standouts?
India, definitely one to watch. The report shows India growing from $4 billion in 2021 to $10 billion in 2025, and then really leaping to $56 billion by 2033. India actually leads the major countries with a 24% CAGR.
24%, that's huge.
It really is. And it's not just India. Southeast Asia as a whole has the highest KGR within APAC at 24.6%.
So that whole sub-region is booming.
Exactly. It really shows how these expanding economies and just, the increasing need for organization in business and life are fueling this. Japan and South Korea are also very significant markets, both projected over $30 billion by 2033.
Okay, comprehensive picture in APAC. What about Latin America?
Latin America is also showing strong growth. The report notes emerging economies there have growing organizational needs as they sort of mature.
Makes sense. Any specific countries?
Brazil is a key one, projected to reach $33.2 billion by 2033, growing at a solid 21.9% CAGR.
33 billion. Okay.
Argentina is also expected to be significant, forecasted around $14.1 billion. And the report mentions others like Colombia, Peru, Chile, all expected to become multi-billion-dollar markets in this space too.
So growth across the board there as well.
Pretty much.
All right, last region, Middle East and Africa.
Right. Now, this region might be starting from a smaller base compared to, say, APAC or North America.
Sure.
But the report still shows consistent, meaningful growth.
Like where?
Egypt is projected to reach $9.2 billion by 2033. Turkey around $6.5 billion. Other parts of the Middle East also contribute, collectively hitting about $2.8 billion.
So even in developing markets, this trend holds.
It seems so. It really underlines that this demand for organization tools, whatever form they take, seems to be a truly global phenomenon.
Okay. So we've seen these just massive numbers, exploding growth rates everywhere. It's clearly not just a blip. It feels like a fundamental boom.
Yeah.
So let's connect it back. What does the report say are the core driving forces behind this? And how do they link back to this, let's call it, broad idea of folder holders?
Okay, the report boils it down to a few key things. First, the digitization of workplaces.
Right. Which at first you might think, hang on, digital means less paper, fewer folders.
Exactly. That's the counterintuitive part. But if folder holder includes digital systems, well, then more digital information absolutely drives the need for better software, better cloud solutions, ways to manage that digital flood.
Okay, that makes sense. Even if it does include physical things, maybe more digital data leads to more structured printing or hybrid physical-digital workflows.
Potentially, yes. And that ties directly into the second driver mentioned, the hybrid work model.
Ah, right. People working from home, the office, everywhere.
Precisely. You need ways to keep organized and access your information seamlessly, regardless of where you are. That demands robust systems Maybe physical organizers for a home office, maybe better shared digital platforms, maybe tools that sync between locations.
So consistency across locations is key.
It seems to be a major factor, driving demand for effective solutions.
And the third driver.
The report also points to just a general rising demand for personal and professional organization tools. Just think about the sheer volume of stuff everyone deals with.
Emails, documents, messages, tasks. It's overwhelming.
Totally. So whether you're a student, running a business, managing a household, there's just this constant influx, the need to be more productive, maybe reduce stress, just maintain some sense of order that's a powerful universal driver.
Yeah, I feel that.
So if you put those together, digitization, creating more stuff to manage, hybrid work, distributing where we manage it, and this underlying human need for order in the face of overload.
Then you can start to see how something labeled folder holders could actually represent this huge market for information management and structure.
Exactly. It seems less about the specific object and more about the function helping people manage information flow in a complex world.
It's fascinating, really, how these huge societal and tech shifts are boiling down to massive demand for what seem like basic organizational tools, whatever format they take.
The business of helping people find and manage their stuff, digital, physical, whatever, it's clearly booming based on these numbers.
So wrapping this up then, the big takeaway from this cognitive market research report is, well, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, the market for what they're terming folder holders isn't just growing, it's exploding globally.
Fueled by these deep shifts in work, technology, and just our basic need to manage information overload.
And let's just reiterate that scale again. A global market projected to soar past $903.26 billion by 2033.
$900 billion, with a global CAGR of 22.5%. Just enormous figures coming straight from that cognitive market research data.
It really makes you pause and think.
It does, and maybe that's the final thought for you listening. Given this relentless march towards digital, the reality of hybrid work, the sheer volume of information we all handle, what does the absolutely explosive growth in this multi-billion, soon-to-be trillion-dollar market, whether it's physical things, digital tools, or some mix, what does that tell us about our deep, maybe even growing human need for organization, for structure, in a world that often just feels chaotic?
It's a really interesting question about our relationship with information and order today. Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something today you probably don't think about much at all. Think about almost any workspace. Office, home desk, classroom. What do you see?
Computers, desks.
Maybe some coffee cups, right. And almost definitely a folder holder.
Yeah, usually tucked away somewhere.
Exactly. So today we're actually doing a deep dive into the surprisingly dynamic market for these folder holders.
This is niche, but okay.
It does. Our source is a Market Pulse report from Cognitive Market Research, and we're going to try and unpack what's shaping this seemingly simple industry.
And see what it tells us about work today.
Precisely. It actually reveals some really interesting things about how we organize, how we work now.
Okay.
We'll look at what's driving growth, some surprising things there, the big challenges it's facing, and how it's kind of evolving.
So like a mini case study of how big trends hit everyday objects.
You got it. So let's jump right in. First part of the report, growth drivers. Now, given everything's going digital, you'd think, why is a market for paper organizers growing? What's the report say?
Yeah, it feels a bit backward, doesn't it? But the report really zeroes in on something fundamental. It's the basic human need for organized, clutter-free spaces. Even with digital stuff everywhere, we still have physical paper, notes, mail. And the report links productivity directly to, well, visual order, keeping things neat.
Right, a messy desk can be distracting.
Totally. And folder holders, they're framed as these like essential tools for managing that physical layer, keeping it tidy, accessible. Doesn't matter if it's a big corporate office, your kitchen table/desk, or a classroom.
That tracks. Even I find a pile of paper stressful, even if most of my work is on screen. And I guess the whole remote work explosion feeds into this.
Oh, absolutely. The report highlights that as a huge driver. More people working from home means more people setting up workstations, often in, tighter shared spaces.
Yeah, definitely not always dedicated offices.
Exactly. So there's this real need for efficient, affordable ways to organize. And folder holders, they tick those boxes. Great for managing invoices, mail, notes, printouts without taking up tons of space or costing much.
Quick way to just sort stuff out visually.
Right. Get it off the main workspace.
Okay. And the report mentioned education, too. How does that fit in?
Yeah, that's another solid growth area. Schools, colleges, they obviously use tons of physical materials. Folder holders are just standard kit for classroom organization.
Makes sense.
But the report also pointed specifically to the home front. Parents getting stuff for their kids, notebooks, worksheets, homework folders.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Parents getting stuff for their kids, notebooks, worksheets, homework folders, keeping that organized.
Ah, the back-to-school effect?
Sort of, yeah. It creates this consistent, almost seasonal demand. So it's not just relying on the corporate world.
Okay, so demand for tidiness, remote work setups, and education keeping things afloat.
Those are the main drivers pushing it forward, according to the research. But, like you hinted, there's definitely a flip side. The report gets into some pretty significant challenges, too.
Right, the headwinds. And I'm guessing the biggest one is digital.
Bingo. Yeah, the report spends a good chunk of time on the whole transition to digital documents, paperless offices.
Cloud storage, online notes.
Exactly. E-signatures, collaboration platforms. All these things just inherently reduce the sheer volume of physical paper floating around, especially in, say, tech companies or places really pushing that digital-first agenda.
And that directly hits the need for physical storage.
It erodes the core reason to buy these things in the first place. Less paper, less need for paper holders. It's a direct threat.
Okay, that's a big one. What else is squeezing the market?
Another major issue flagged is commoditization and the intense price competition that comes with it.
Meaning they all kind of look the same and people just buy the cheapest.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Because a basic folder holder isn't complex to make, the market's apparently flooded with low-cost, often unbranded options. Lots of local manufacturers churning them out. So you get these price wars, which obviously squeezes profits. And it makes it really hard for any brand, especially one trying to be a bit more premium, to stand out or, frankly, justify charging more.
Loyalty goes out the window when it's just a simple box.
Yeah, brand loyalty is pretty weak when the basic function is all that most people perceive they need.
Okay, so digital eating away at the need and price wars making it hard to make money on what's left. Any other big restraints?
The third one the report mentions ties into that commoditization point, limited innovation.
Ah, like how different can you make a folder holder?
Exactly. Compared to, I don't know, smartphones or even chairs, there's just not a huge amount of room for radical change. The report notes most differences are just, material, color, maybe the number of slots.
Not exactly groundbreaking stuff.
Right. So this lack of really significant innovation makes it harder for companies to create unique value, grab attention, or command higher prices.
Yeah.
It feeds back into that cycle of just competing on price.
Wow. Okay, so it's a bit of a paradox. Clear needs keeping it relevant, organization, remote work, schools, but then these huge pressures from digital price competition and, well, it being a fairly simple product. Sounds tough.
It definitely paints a picture of a market under pressure.
And this is where, for me, the report got really interesting. It shows the market isn't just, rolling over. It's adapting. It's evolving. There are some promising trends emerging.
Right, moving from the problems to the solutions or adaptations the market is finding.
Exactly. And the first trend seems like a direct answer to that commoditization problem we just talked about. It's moving beyond just holding folders.
Getting fancier.
Kind of, yeah. The report talks about the increasing popularity of aesthetic and multifunctional designs. People, especially setting up home offices or just wanting nicer spaces, they don't just want a plastic tub.
They want something that looks good.
Right, something that fits the decor. So the report mentions designs using like wood or metal or clear acrylic, stuff that looks intentional. And even adding extra features like maybe a little phone dock built in or a small drawer for paper clips. It's about blending that design element with practicality, making it part of the room, part of the whole desk's setup.
That makes sense. A way to add value beyond just the basic function, maybe escape that race to the bottom on price.
Exactly. What other trends did you see in there?
Well, another big one, and this probably isn't surprising, is sustainability. The push for eco-friendly materials.
Ah, yes. That's everywhere now.
Totally. The report notes products showing up made from recycled cardboard or maybe biodegradable plastics or renewables like bamboo.
Okay.
And this obviously resonates with certain buyers, people who are eco-conscious or companies trying to meet their own environmental goals. The report had a nice line, something like, Green isn't just a color, it's a commitment.
Catchy and true. It gives companies another way to differentiate, appeal to values, maybe justify a slightly different price point than the generic plastic version.
Precisely. It taps into that value set. And there was one more trend mentioned, right?
Yeah, the final one was about using them as branding tools. Corporate gifts.
Putting logos on them.
Exactly. Companies using customized folder holders for, say, new employee welcome kits or conference swag or maybe client gifts. It's practical, right? Something people might actually use regularly. And it keeps the brand visible in a subtle, everyday way. Builds a bit of engagement.
So kind of like a branded mug, but for your desk papers.
Kinda, yeah. A quiet way to stay top of mind.
Okay, so if we pull all this together, what does this journey through the report really tell us? For me, it shows this market, folder holders, it's not just fading away because of digital. It's actually broadening its role.
Yeah, it's more than just storage now.
Right. It's becoming tied into productivity tools, like we said, but also home design, sustainability choices, even corporate identity and branding.
That's a really good summary. And it's maybe worth, connecting this back to your own workspace, wherever you're listening, home, school, office. Have you started noticing these shifts? Seen maybe a nicer wooden holder pop up, or one with a charging port, or made from recycled stuff?
Or maybe you got one with a company logo on it recently. It makes you look at them a bit differently, doesn't it?
It really does. It's just fascinating how something so, basic, so functional, like a folder holder, is actually being shaped and redefined by these huge forces changing our world.
Yeah, things like remote work, the whole digital transformation, the big push for sustainability, even our desire for more personalized, aesthetically pleasing spaces, it all filters down.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Consider those everyday objects around you, the really simple stuff. What other things, if you really dug into their market, might tell a similar, surprisingly complex story? A story of challenge, adaptation, and unexpected relevance in today's world.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.